Hey guys, I'm holding C1, your very first cervical vertebra. It's also known as the atlas. It has these smooth articulating surfaces here on the lateral masses that hold up and articulate in a gliding motion at the occipital condyles. Okay, see here. Oops, see here and here. Okay, so you can say yes, that's your yes joint. Passing through this hole, just like at the foramen magnum, is your spinal cord. This is called the vertebral foramen. I'm holding the transverse processes of this vertebra, and at those processes, you can see there's foramen there. Those are called the transverse foramen. That's for the vertebral artery, and those are only found on transverse processes in the cervical spine. You have 7 cervical vertebrae in most people. This one sits on top of C2, and C2 is called the axis. So here is your axis, okay? Notice that it has a body, it has an odontoid process, so no other vertebra is going to have this thumb-like projection that juts up like that, and it's so that we can say no. So C1 on C2 rotating like that is the no joint. You have a ligamentous attachment. Well, you have lots of ligaments, but the ligamentous attachment posterior to that dens allows that rotation in real life and prevents that C1 from slipping forward off of C2. Okay, so some parts of the vertebrae. A typical vertebrae has, I'm going to show you the house with the floor, the walls, the rooftop. Okay, so I'm holding the body, and at vertebral bodies, in between the vertebral bodies, you have intervertebral disc at each level, right? And coming out laterally are the spinal nerves branching off of your spinal cord. And that spinal cord is coursing through the vertebral foramen at each vertebral level. But that hole, that foramen, is called the intervertebral foramen. And it's formed, if you take a look, by the vertebrae above and the vertebrae below. Okay, and check out this little joint right here, where we have movement between this vertebra above and this one below, and those facets, that's the zygapophyseal joint. Okay, zygapophyseal, Z for short. Okay, and so in the thoracic spine, everything in orange or peach is they're coronally facing in a coronal plane. That will allow lateral flexion and rotation movement. Structure determines function. But if you look closely down in the lumbar spine, the zygapophyseal joint, the Z joints, are more sagittal in orientation, and that's going to allow flexion and extension at the waist, right? So these parts of the vertebrae. I have the spinous process. You can feel that. That's what you palpate, those pointy parts here, muscular attachment. I have the transverse processes. Okay, I have the rooftop of your house. These are lamina, part of a laminectomy, cutting these to have spinal surgery. The pedicles are the walls of your house, and this floor is formed from the posterior wall of that body. Okay, so these facets that you see here, these superior articular processes with these facets in the thoracic spine, are faced in a coronal plane, both superior and inferior. So these facets here inferiorly are where this bone articulates with the vertebra below it. Okay, and so I'm holding a lumbar vertebra here, where the superior articular facets here and here are more in a sagittal plane. They're kind of cupped so that you can move, forward and back like that, flexion and extension. This bone is said to look more like a moose, whereas the thoracic looks more like a giraffe. Okay, and then we have the sacrum. The L5 sits on the sacrum, okay, on that promontory there. And these lateral portions here, these auricular surfaces, these wings, this is where you have the SI joint, so sacroiliac. So the ilium, notice here, here's your sacrum in blue. The ilium of the coxal bone is forming that joint there. So I can move my leg, move my hip. Okay, and then I have the last little segment there, the coccyx. But the foramen of your sacrum, that's where spinal nerves will course through at each level. Okay, just wanted to get you guys some close-ups of your vertebrae here. Okay, so there's C1 sitting on C2. Okay, if you look closely, you can see the dens. Well, maybe not. Okay. All right, guys, we're going to discuss more of this in class. Thanks.